What's up, everybody? You're listening to Salah's Corner with the one and only Salah Muhammad. So throughout the journey of this podcast, I've been recording out of Rec Philly. They provided me with a lot of space and opportunity to have some great interviews, whether it was elected officials, entrepreneurs, HR professionals, anyone who I think can progress the conversation on community. And along those lines, it's about time I finally sat down with Will Toms, who's the co-creator of Rec Philly. And we had an amazing conversation that really took us through the journey of his upbringing, through high school and his formative years, college, and ultimately the vision of Rec Philly. But also, what does community mean? I think the important part that we try to talk about on this podcast is, why do we need community? Why isn't community important to our success? Why is community important to make sure that we aren't just surviving, but thriving? Again, as I've taken this journey through creating this podcast, I've understood the difference between having a job, either punching in or out, or, salary, management, whatever the case may be, doing what you were told to do, doing what someone else's agenda is, and the difference between once you get home and actually creating something that you're truly passionate about and finding ways to make that your career, make that something that thrives. And as we break away from what the tradition of the workforce really is, not just a job, not just, you punching the clock, not you taking orders from someone else and pursuing their vision, but finding ways to financially sustain yourself to pursue yours. And if you can't have that, then, are we really living? So that's just something to think about as I bring you this conversation. Will, brother.
What's up, man?
Thank you for agreeing to do this. This is a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a while because, I told you that, I think the importance of this conversation was to make sure that I found the right intention for it, because I think it is something that is incredibly useful to a lot of people.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, and glad to be here, and really excited to talk to you and just share stories, man. It's got quite a few of them. So
nice. I love a good story. So let's just dive right into the mix a little bit and tell us about what you're doing here at Rec Philly.
Yeah. So I am the co-founder, the chief creative officer, the visionary of an organization that we call Rec Philly. And essentially, Rec Philly was birthed out of first being able to solve my own problem, right? I grew up as a creative kid, always had creative friends, and I, being, the communications, media, and economics student that I was in college, and even before that, just always kind of thinking about these bigger problems of, why did a lot of people have money? Why did most of the people I know didn't have it, right? I was always gravitated towards the business side of art, right? So I always found myself, playing this pseudo management role to a lot of my creative friends. So it came a place in time, after I got out of college, we were trying to take our music and our art seriously, and it was like, how do we really build a livelihood around this? And we realized really quickly that it was pretty challenging here in Philly to navigate, to get connected to the opportunities we were trying to get to, right? Trying to get on those Live Nation stages, trying to find the money to keep paying $90 an hour to go to Milk Boy, right?
Yeah.
And just find a community of people who were just as passionate about making money and building business as they were about the creativity, right? So I couldn't find those things, and for me it was like, okay, well, if I can't find them, I'm gonna figure out a way to use the resources I do have to create it. So that led us to create a warehouse space, or to create a space in a warehouse in North Philly, right? And that started off in one room, and we said, all right, I'm gonna put my backdrops up, because at that time I was shooting music videos, creating content. My best friend Leonzo was a rapper, so it was like, okay, let's create this studio. And quickly, this model of just having this space for us as creatives, while we would invite our friends over, it grew. And we said, okay, if you guys want to hang out here, pitch up on the rent, we can keep doing this thing. And fast forward about 2.5 years, we birthed this membership program and said, hey, we're not the only ones who need these tools. We're not the only ones who want to have these conversations we're having about the business side. And we're not the only ones that understand the importance of collaboration. So what Rec Philly is, today, we think of it as a gym membership for creative people, right? And we think of it that way because when you get ready to join a gym, it's really because, hey, I know I want to get fit, right? I have some goal I want to accomplish. At the gym, they've got all the tools for you to do that, right? The exercise equipment, you also go to the gym because you understand that, hey, well, maybe even if I don't understand everything about the workout routines, there's someone there that can probably help me and guide me in the right direction. And third, there's that social accountability of when I pull up to the gym, it's a little easier to get my workout in when I look to the left and the right and I see these guys going hard, right? So that for us was like, well, where's the environment for that in the creative space? So we created it. So that's what we do. And then right alongside of this gym membership model, we also run a boutique creative agency. And that allows us to work with brands of all sizes, from Lyft to Red Bull. And specifically, we do 3 things. 1 being event production, 2 being content creation, digital storytelling, and 3 being talent booking. And the beauty of those 3 services specifically, it allows us to come right back over into our incubator, right, the membership, and then work with those folks to execute these projects to be able to pay our members to do what they love.
You know, I love the idea of a gym membership for creatives, because I often find myself sometimes at home when I can't, make it to, to rec, honestly, to do a little bit of work, or I can't make it to the coffee shop where I see a bunch of people doing work, and I get a fraction done sitting on a couch in front of my laptop than when I'm able to get done when I'm surrounded by other creative people.
Right, and that's the power of environment.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm a firm believer in environment, and as I designed this space, I did a lot of research and learning around architecture and the understanding of what happens to a person when you can create an environment for something to get done. Right, when I was a kid, I was raised with my grandmother. My grandmother used to always tell me, if you want to see something happen, you have to create the space for it to happen.
Yeah.
Right, so she'd be like, I can't tell you to not bounce the ball in the house if you don't got nowhere outside where you can bounce the ball. Because kids are always going to bounce the ball.
Absolutely.
Right?
They're going to bounce the shit out of that ball.
So that's that whole thing. And then the other reason I really love the gym membership analogy is you don't get fit by just signing up for the gym.
Yeah.
You got to use it and you got to put in the work. And I think that helps click for a lot of folks where it's like, yeah, the resources and the education will be there all day, but if I don't do nothing with it, I'm going to stay where I'm at.
Exactly. So you said you grew up with your grandmother. Did you grow up in Philly?
Yeah, so essentially I started, my childhood and then, up through most of grade school in Philly and, from Germantown. And after kind of, the Philly inner city life, I've had, my mother battling drug addiction. My father's been incarcerated for the past 22 years, I've seen some of my uncles be murdered at the age of 16. So quickly my grandmother knew, going back to that environment piece, she was like, yo, we're going to find you a high school outside the city that we can really put you in the right space to be successful. I've always been a young, bright kid, but she was like, yo, if we can get this environment piece right, you're going to be great. So I went to high school just north of the city in Bucks County. But, church always been in the city. I'm a Philly kid for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So going back to that moment of finding that right high school or that right environment for you, do you look back at that moment as being that crucial experience that you needed to get on this path?
In a way, right? Because, look, as a kid, you look up to your parents, you look up to those in your environment, right? So I think one of the things that she knew was if I stayed in my neighborhood, knowing who, my father and who my uncles were in the neighborhood, she was like, yo, I don't need you glorifying the things that they've done. I don't need you trying to, follow in their footsteps and be able to outdo them and carry torches, right, and things like that. So going out there was a blessing for me because what it allowed me to do was just be around other minds like mine, right? Because I've always been in a space where it's like, yo, like, my mind's just always been somewhere else. So for me to be in an environment that nurtured that instead of being in an environment where I'm on the bus and motherfuckers laughing because I'm reading books, right? Like,
right.
it was really good for me. And then the second piece is, I built 2 of my best relationships out there in that high school, 2 of my best friends till today, right? One being my business partner, Dave Silver. We met in 10th grade. The other being my brother, Leonzo, who's the founder of a company called Global Village.
Love Global Village.
Yeah, so we all actually, we met in high school and have been long-term friends since then. So I think that was the most pivotal thing for me, and just being able to really choose my friends and design my environment to create the things I wanted to create.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, because I can imagine though, as a kid in high school, you talk about that, right? Like you riding the bus and getting clowned for reading books, or
I was a nerd.
Or I likewise.
but I was a cool nerd. You know what I'm saying? Like I had a way of the charisma was there, but like for real, I was a nerd.
but that had to be hard though, right? Because you living in 2 different worlds basically.
100%.
And how does somebody survive that?
Yeah, man, I think that's a really good observation, man. I definitely lived that life of, the alien, right? Because I was, and this is the cliche, right? You're too artsy for the hood kids, too hood for the artsy kids, right? Or vice versa, however you want to look at it. And for me, that was just really difficult because I'm going to a school now, in a predominantly white high school. They never seen anybody who looked like me, who then talked like me, thought like me, right? Could move and carry themselves in a certain way. They had all these preconceived notions as if, black people ain't doing the damn thing out here like we've always been, and things like that. But then at the same time, the alienation of, like, in my family, I have a different perception as well, right? Because I'm moving a little bit different, I'm talking a little bit different, right? And things like that. So yeah, I had to deal with that, but I think it helped me build thick skin early and, build my confidence as an individual, and just learn how to navigate in any circle, any walk of life, where now I really, I think since early I've been that social butterfly where I could walk in any room and be able to move, and still be able to navigate for what I needed to.
I'm glad you went in that direction because I think I remember growing up. I don't know how old you are.
I'm 28.
Okay. So we're not too far. I'm 33, and it was, you were clowned if you. I had glasses too, so I was like a nerd. But you were clowned for being smart, right?
Yeah.
Like you were clowned for getting good grades.
Yeah.
You were clowned for just like being in class on time, right? Shit like that.
I grew up in the public library.
Yeah.
You feel me? So like to be doing that, hey bro, we gonna go ball. Oh, well, you know what I'm saying? My grandma said I gotta go to the library, bro. Like, come on, that, you know what I mean? That don't fly. So yeah, I know what that's like.
How did that impact you as you got later in life, right? Because I can imagine, as I grew up later in life, and I started working in spaces that were predominantly white spaces, and I started to, you one of them. How did that ever?
When you say you one of them, is that like what you say a little bit more about that?
You one of them brothers. You ain't a brother. You a vanilla brother.
Oh,
like
word.
You.
Yeah, I always got the you talk white. I've always got the how would they put it? Yeah, but I've always got that. And for me, when I was really young, that bothered me, a lot, right? And there was almost this place in time where I wanted to almost overcompensate. But then as I got older and I started to be able to, again, navigate these spaces, I flipped that on its head, man. And it wasn't about, I started to understand, there is no such thing as talking white. We're either articulate or we're not, right?
Right.
But then the funny thing is, even now today, right, I'm dabbling into more and more public speaking and things like that. And then I get the opposite, where it's like, people come at me, especially, people not of color, where, like, I get off the stage and I'll be like, oh, man, you're so articulate. I'm like, you too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you expect, right?
For a black guy, you real smart.
Yeah, so, like, I've always had to, understand people's perceptions of me versus what the truth is. And I think, I'm at a place in time now where I've learned none of that matters. So I'm going to just do me. And fortunately, I've been able to do it well enough, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
And I think that's the one thing I think in high school, having to navigate these circles and having to deal with that sort of stuff, I've always had the experience of having to be twice as good as my counterpart who doesn't look like me, right? All throughout, school to college, that's always been our experience, right? We got to work 3 times as hard to get half as much. And then eventually, once I got, beyond those institutions, I just kept going 3 times as hard. So now I win 3 times as much.
Nice. I love that. So you leave high school. Where did you go from there?
So I left high school, and again, I loved school, right? I was that kid, like, hyped to go to school. Part of it because I knew the importance of education, and that I knew that was my way out. And then second, because that was almost my escape, right, from all the realities as a young person that I was dealing with. And it's like, if I get to school and I'm in these books, I'm not thinking about how much I miss my pop. I'm not thinking about how my mom didn't come through for my birthday. I'm not thinking about all these things. And this is me, obviously, hindsight is 2020, right?
Right.
I wasn't thinking consciously about that in that time.
But you recognize it as a space where you can leave problems at the door.
Exactly that, right? If I excel here, none of the other stuff mattered,
Right.
But after high school, I went out to the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I studied communications media, which is all about, production, TV production, film, etc. And then I had a minor in economics, which was really out of just like personal interest, right?
Yeah.
Again, I wanted to understand how money worked. Excuse me. I wanted to understand why most people had it and why the people I knew didn't. So I studied that. And when I studied communications media, I did believe that I was going to go into broadcasting. I thought I was going to be producing TV. I thought I was potentially even going to be on the front side of TV. But once I got to school, I fell in love with production, so I still did that. But really, I fell in love with the creative process, and I just really love to make things and tell stories. So long story short, in college, I'm really, really involved. Again, I love school, so I'm like running the TV studio and directing and producing TV shows. But then I'm also really involved with my fraternity and running social events, and then doing all these other extracurricular things.
Setting the groundwork for Rec Philly.
Yeah, real talk. And, throwing those events in the basement of my fraternity where, hey, my artist friends, yo, you guys should come and perform here, right? I got 200 people that's going to be in the basement, 300 people that will be in the basement tonight. So that was kind of the groundwork there, while Dave is simultaneously doing that same thing over at Temple, right? And we're on Skype writing business plans together, right? Doing the whole thing. And we've been doing that since high school. Like, that's just the stuff that was fun to us. But anyway, long story short, after IUP, during IUP, I got to intern for NBC Universal. And this was early. I got that internship set up at like sophomore year, really dove into that. But that internship was such a pivotal experience because that's when I got to work in news, and I realized instantly how much I hated everything that had to do with news. From what they covered, the working culture, the speed and the pace of it. And I was like, yo, if I ever have to work in any environment like this, it's a dub. And that's what really lit my fire for my own personal creative production. Started going harder with the art and things like that because I knew I loved the creative process, I loved media, and I also knew the power of it, but I knew that news wasn't it. So that helped me really understand, when I get back to Philly, I'm shooting music videos. When I get back to Philly, I'm creating content, I'm creating marketing promo materials and things like that. And then doing that really set the tone for the company that we built right after college.
I can imagine, that's powerful insight to be able to recognize at an early age that this just is not for me. Like, this industry just isn't for me. But then also to, what you're going after isn't the traditional.
Right.
And you're breaking ground and changing what a career path is going to be. It's not, you punching in the clock and just going at it. Like, how do you manage that?
So I think one of the blessings that I've always been fortunate enough to have is a praying grandmother. You know what I'm saying? I'm a preacher's kid. When I grew up, my grandmother was a minister. So in my house, you couldn't say I can't. You know what I mean? And so when it came down to me having big, ambitious goals, there was no if, ands, safety plan. It was, you could be whatever you want to be. And again, that's a piece of environment as well. And early, and I've even had conversations with my grandparents where, like, they'd even tell me, they were like, you might not finish college. You might get into a space where, like, you're going to be doing something so great, somebody's going to want to snatch you up to help them build their business, right? Or you might just have the idea that you want to do it on your own. And, we didn't have money. We just had tons of love. So it was like, it wasn't coming from this place of, like, oh, you're good, you're comfortable forever. It was coming from a place of like, we just believe. And I think, I caught that bug of belief as well. And, I just had the faith to say, and honestly, I think I'm grateful for the upbringing I had and coming from where I come from. Because, like, when you hear all these stories about startups and people being like, I'm bootstrapping, you know what I'm saying? I'm grinding, eating oodles and noodles. I'm like, oh, well, that's familiar for me. I know what that's about.
I love oodles and noodles.
You feel me? So for me, it was just like, that belief was instilled in me from young, just because of my faith. And then after that, the vision was clear.
Yeah. What kind of parties was you throwing at Temple?
So again, I went to IUP, so we threw all my first parties were there, and then when I came home from IUP to Philly, teamed up with Dave. We took over his fraternity basement, and we was having all types of parties, you know, parties, concerts. We had a lot of fun.
Nice.
I'll just put it like that. We had a lot of fun.
That's fair. I'll just wish I was there.
It's definitely some moments.
Parties. So then, you know, you and Dave really kept in touch through the years to, you know, from high school through college, even when you were separate. How did you recognize that kinship? How did you? A lot of people look for like that partner that they can go in with, and you found that early. How do you maintain that and through the years and today?
Yeah, so, you know, again, we met in high school, and honestly, the universe just put us in that space. You know, my last name and his last name are close in the alphabet, so we always, you know, we ended up weirdly having, like, that sophomore year, we had, like, 3 or 4 classes together, which is really weird for, you know, when you have rotation classes or whatever.
Right.
But we always ended up sitting near each other, and there was a group project in chemistry, and we had to create a video, and we did a project, Mentos and soda, and just through the project, and I don't even think we really followed the exact prompts on how it was supposed to happen, but through working together on that project, we realized really early, we were like, yo, our working styles are so complementary, right? What you love and what you are really good at is very balanced of what I love and what I'm very good at, and also culturally, we grew a lot of respect for each other because we came from totally different worlds.
Right.
But like deep down, we had the same North Star of where we were trying to go. And I think we just really appreciated that early on, and it was almost just like infatuation. I'm trying to learn how he's moving and how his family does things. He's trying to, you know, understand how I'm moving and where I'm coming from, how my family does things. And then when we really started connecting off creating, it was just, I don't know, we both just kind of hit our stride, right? Just figuring ourselves out, you know. We're now, let's create short films. Okay, let's just create these business plans for these t-shirt companies. Let's, you know, build business plans for these media companies. And when we went away to college, we just never really skipped a beat. It was like, yo, it's Saturday, bro. We going to hit the Skype because we got to get these t-shirts out. I'm selling the shirts in IUP. He's selling the shirts out in Temple. And we just knew early, we were like, yo, bro, we're going to go off to college. We're going to do this stuff, but we're going to build this creative business. We're going to be able to build the environment to always be around creative people. And we're going to be able to really live our lives through what we want to do. And we're going to help other people do that too. And that was way before the actual business model of rec was a thing. But that was always the vision. And every decision we made after that was always about getting us closer to that vision. So, you know, that's kind of how the foundation of it started. And then now as adults, and, you know, we had some success with Broad Street Music Group. Then we pivoted to rec and found more success with that. It was just like, yo, we're really on to something.
Yeah.
You know, I think the most beautiful thing ever is that if I think back to the conversations we were having as 16-year-olds in the parking lots of, you know, churches where we'd just be freestyling with the homies, who we were as 16-year-olds would be incredibly proud of who we are now because it's literally the things we were talking about and doing. And I just think, you know, our friendship has always just been built off this mutual, here's where we're trying to get to. We have lots of respect for each other's skills, but also each other's weaknesses. And I think one of the things we've done better than most partnerships I've seen is we have a good knack for just removing the ego to get the vision accomplished.
How do you do that? That's hard.
I mean, we've been through a lot together, right? Like, it's been my boy since we were 15, 16 years old. Yeah. So it's like, you know, when you're 10, 11, 12 years deep, you know, I think we've always just seen the best in each other. You know, even through all the bullshit, even through all of the challenges, it's like, nah, I know who you are for real. So it's like, yo, we're not afraid to pull that coattail. Hey, bro, come on, what are we doing this for, right? Like, hey, bro, I see what you were trying to do here, but you ain't really hit the mark, right? And, yeah, that's just real, like, brotherhood, you know, for me. And I think that's really got us through because, I tell you, man, I ain't perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I think the best thing is having people like Dave or my boy Leonzo who can just hold me high instead of being, like, talking down and be, you ain't doing this, you ain't doing that. It's all about, hey, bro, you ain't doing this, but the person I know you to be should be doing that.
Right.
And that has a way of just snapping you back to be like, oh, damn, I lost focus, right?
Right.
But, yeah.
When you...
And I'd say it this way. It's just you know, the thing that made us click, and I never really put it this way until now, I've never thought about it this way, it's just early on, I think we may have been the first people in each other's lives that had the growth mindset. When we were in circles of people who didn't have it, once we saw that in each other, we were like, whoa, that thing. And me, him, and Leandro always shared that. And I think we always just wanted to stay close to that.
You were placed in each other's lives, the three of you, in when you needed it most. And took advantage of that.
Well said.
You seem to have a calling for, you talk a lot about giving that creative space for other creatives, right?
Yeah.
And that seems to be something you keep going back to, whether it was putting on shows, whether it was, you know, what we're doing today here at Rec. Where does that calling come from?
That calling for me, it started off with, again, solving my own problem, right? One of the most challenging things I ever faced early on was, you know, when my uncle was murdered, right? And as a 4 or 5-year-old kid who's looking up to your 16-year-old uncle, I didn't know how to process that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that loss was crazy for me. And then the loss of, you know, my mother when she was like, yo, I can't handle this, right? And she kind of gave up that responsibility to take care of me. And my father going away, all I had was art. You know what I'm saying? All I had was my poetry to be able to just write the things that I really didn't feel like I had space to express. So for me, I always understood the power of art and media. And I'm like, yo, if I don't got $1 to my name, I know my story is valuable. If I don't got nothing, like for me, like, even being able to, like, just go somewhere to just dance for a night, right? Yeah. I knew what that meant. It wasn't just about going to the party. It was about really just getting shit off you, right? Like, I remember times I'd go to WoW and I would hear Dance My Pain Away, right? And like,
WoW.
Right? And then hear Dance My Pain Away was like, that was a saving grace, right? Like, so for me, I was like, damn, like, as people of color, as black people, bro, like, the only reason we can ever really have this joy in this whole ecosystem of the system we're living in is because we can express ourselves and connect. So for me, it was like, well, what would it look like if we could empower people to, one, get to know themselves through the art, because that's what it does.
Yes.
But then two, to have ownership of the intellectual property we create when we express, because it's already valuable, but we just need to have the means to protect it and then to market it and be able to distribute it without needing to give it to the label to do it for us, to tell us how valuable it is and things like that.
To listen to the rest of this interview and more episodes, please download Salah's Corner wherever you listen to podcasts.